often our baggage goes all the way back to childhood, some of the upbringing stuff, and even along the way where people just dump on us. And yet God doesn't want that. He wants to clear us out of all of that rubbish, just help us to be freer again. Just imagine all that weight and rubbish being like, stones put into a rucksack, and it's like God wants to just get rid of those stones, and suddenly you get to motor in life because you don't have that weight bearing you down.
Welcome to What's the Story? My name is Matt Edmondson, and this is a podcast full of stories about faith and courage from everyday people. And today I am chatting with one of my best mates, Ian Dowsett, about his Christian journey, the challenges he's faced in life, and some of the lessons he's learned along the way. Now, you can find our entire archive of episodes and live streams on our website for free at whatsastorypodcast.com. And whilst you're there, make sure you sign up to the newsletter, and each week we will email you the links and the notes from the conversations. They get direct to your inbox totally for free, so make sure you sign up for that. Now, this episode is brought to you by Crowd Online Church. Hey, listen, if you're out there and you're looking for church, check out Crowd Online Church. Or if you kind of don't see the point of church, or you don't get you're not quite sure about church, check it out. We think you'll like it. It's all online. Crowd.church is a website. Go on, have a look, see what you think. Let me know. Now, Ian has been in church leadership for the last 20 years. I know he doesn't look a day older than 21. He is married to Ruth, who leads alongside him, and they have three beautiful, very beautiful girls and one very lazy dog. They've planted a church on an estate in central London and now lead a church in northwest London. Ian briefly taught history, which he still enjoys reading about, and he is a tentative triathlete and a one-time marathon runner, apparently. He also has a heart for the homeless, having helped those on the street since being a teenager, and now as a trustee of Firm Foundation, the homeless charity in Harrow. He has been a Christian since the age of 9, yet still enjoys discovering new aspects of God's love and goodness. Mate, welcome to the What's the Story podcast. Finally, we get to do this conversation. I've been looking forward to this. How are we doing, sir?
Yeah, no, very good. It is great to finally get around to it. We as you say, we've been planning it for a long time.
Yeah.
We've done it in person ourselves many a time. But we're good to do it sort of live online as well. So.
Yeah. It's funny, isn't it? Now we record it, so our kids will watch this back and go, "Oh, Dad, what are you doing?"
Yeah, I'll say that about you.
Yeah, they'll say that about me. Yeah, no, it is worth saying. I did say it in the intro. We have been friends for a very, very long time. We've been friends, since uni? So that was back in 92. Did we meet? 91, 92?
Yeah, 30 years. Must be 30 years.
Yeah, 30 long old years. So, yeah.
Wow, what a time. I've survived. I've lost some hair. You've gone grey. So.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? It's funny because my two boys now are at uni, which was the same age when we met. And it's funny how it all sort of comes full circle, really. And how out of uni, you make these amazing friends and you sort of stay lifelong friends. And I can see it actually with my boys at uni as well. Yeah. So, yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Interesting. So... Yeah. So for the good folks listening, you are currently in Harrow, right?
Currently a vicar of a church in Harrow called St. Paul's, although we have just recently announced to our church members that we're planning to move on in the summer. So yes, we've been here for 14 years. We've loved serving and being here. We've grown up, our children have grown up here, but we feel that, incredibly, as God leads us through lots of things, that he's saying it's time to go. And unlike some people, I don't have a job to go on to. We're trusting God that he's going to show us what lies ahead. And we're looking forward to seeing what that is over the next couple of months. So
exciting times. Yeah, very exciting times, really. I mean, that's a massive change, isn't it? Because if you've been doing something for 14 years and you feel then, it's time to move on, that's quite a big deal.
Yeah, it's a big deal to change in the first place. I guess, the fact that we are literally stepping out at the moment into nothing. It's a bit like, that Harrison Ford thing in Raiders of the Lost Ark where he steps out onto an empty space. It feels a little bit like that. But we kind of can see something of what lies ahead. We know that God's going to use some of our history, our past. He always does that. Nothing's ever wasted with God. And yeah, he's using the fact that we love working with people, love praying for people, love helping people who particularly maybe feel a bit broken in their lives.
Yeah.
We've just appreciated the way that God has helped us in our own brokenness, deal with, often our baggage goes all the way back to childhood, some of the upbringing stuff, and even along the way where people just dump on us. And yet God doesn't want that. He wants to clear us out of all of that rubbish, just help us to be freer again.
Mm.
Just imagine all that weight and rubbish being like, stones put into a rucksack. And it's like, God wants to just get rid of those stones. And suddenly you get to motor in life because you don't have that weight bearing you down. So that's what we love, praying with people and
Yeah.
helping them feel that same weightlessness, freedom that comes from being with him and getting stuff in their past dealt with. So we're hoping to do that with all sorts of people. But that would be one of the key things that we sense for the future for us, for Ruth and me,
Yeah.
working together.
So this desire, then, I mean, I kind of know the answers before I ask them, but I'm aware. It's funny, isn't it, when you talk to someone that you're very familiar with? But this desire to help people deal with the baggage, to take the metaphorical rocks out of the rucksack, was that there when you started at the church in Harrow? That same desire, is that why you started there, or is that sort of something that's happened and sort of come out of your time in Harrow?
Yeah, no, it was already there. I think particularly for me, there was a key moment actually in the place we were in North Kensington. Before that, I was journeying with an older Christian who was kind of a bit of my mentor, and he was going through some stuff as well. And just as he went through that journey of finding freedom, he kind of helped me process that stuff myself, and really would just open my eyes to the fact of things that I'd read in the Bible before, things that I'd seen true, but never really applied it to my life. And it was
Mm,
like, yeah, I've been a Christian, like you say, I've been a Christian since the age of 9, but sometimes we read stuff, and we know stuff, but we don't live it. We don't actually action it in our lives. And so for the first time, I actually started actually sort of, really depending on God for
mm,
decisions that I was making. And I think at one stage I just believed, oh, God was only there for the big decisions in life, and actually started realizing God is there for every decision in life. It really is. He does
yeah.
care about, the small stuff. And actually, it's often when we don't see God in the small stuff that's when our lives start to kind of go off track, and they go track up a little, then they go track up a lot if we keep going down that pathway. So for me, it was so good to find people I could go, do you know what? This is not right in my life. I need to
Mm,
deal with this. To admit I've got brokenness in me. To admit
yeah.
that actually I'm not this Superman that culture makes us all want to be. That I have got insecurities within me. I've got a sense of failure sometimes, or a sense of overwhelmness, and actually just to be able to share that with God, but also with trusted people around me was fantastic. And then to pray into it and see God speak. The wonderful thing was God would give us, we call it sort of original design. It's like, God unrolling his blueprint for your life and kind of going,
Mm,
this is how I made you to be. When I designed you, when I designed you, Matt, Ian, it's how I made you to be. And
mm,
there's just some lovely, lovely affirming words. I mean, God spoke over me that I'm a man of integrity, a man of humor, a man of courage. And these are things that
mm,
I am, but I'm also becoming. I'm not
yeah.
fully formed in that yet. I'm not that fully formed person. It was so affirming to have someone speak these things over me,
Mm,
and God would use images that were pertinent to me. There was stuff that no one else would know, very few people would know. Certainly not the people who were praying these things for me. And it would blow me away. It was like, how on earth do you know that, God? How on earth did that person know that? It could only have
Yeah.
been you. So it was incredible. Yeah, absolutely incredible.
Wow. So you have this encounter, for want of a better expression, then when you're leading a church in North Kensington, all these things sort of come out. You then hit the ground of running in Harrow. And just let everyone know, you're married at this point, right?
Yeah, that's right. We're married to Ruth, married already a number of years by that stage.
Yeah. So I read out in the bio that you started out your working life. So uni finishes for us. You go off and become a history teacher. And and then all of a sudden you say again.
Why are you laughing?
I'm just going. Just why not? And so, so all of a sudden, though, you start down this road of being a history teacher, and then you're like, no, actually, I'm going to go into the Church of England. I'm going to do my training. What happened there?
Yeah, well, it's we speak of maybe a call, and I felt called to be a leader in the church at some point, right from when I was a teenager. So
Yeah.
in one sense, it wasn't a new thing. It wasn't like, oh, I started being a teacher and I'm suddenly backtracking. It was more that I knew God was calling me into church leadership. And when I came out of university, I said, okay, God, I'm ready. And he said, well, I'm not sure you are. And so he kind of said, I want you to do this first. And so for me, part of my, I guess, being made ready for being a church leader was actually to go into teaching. And it wasn't that, I don't think it was the teaching bit that was relevant. I think it was the relating with life, relating with children whose backgrounds were very different from mine. Some children who had really hard backgrounds, coping with lively classrooms where people weren't so interested in learning all the time, more interested in staring out the window or distracting the person next to them. And so, yeah, for me, that was part of my shaping, my forming, and God knew that. And I certainly, after the first year of teaching, it had been hard work. I'd had one or two classes, particularly, that were quite defiant, really rowdy. This is just a normal state comp. And after the first year, I thought, do you know what? I've done my year of forming. I'm done. I'm going to move on now. I spoke to a very wise person, my dad, and he said,
Legend.
Ian, don't run away from it. If God's calling on to church leadership, wait until he calls you to move on. Don't run away. And it was really helpful because the next year, I only did another year of teaching, but then the next year was totally different. And I was able to face up with some of the things that I've been struggling with, some of the fact that the things that hadn't been going well, I was able to sort of work on and work through, both in terms of the class themselves, but also the stuff in me that I needed just to deal with. And I became, I left knowing that I wasn't running away. I left
Yeah.
knowing that I faced up to those things and seen them through. And yeah, I left with my head held high in that sense,
Yeah.
and not beaten. And it was good. And it was good because I actually saw some of the children who'd been a real pain in the first year actually really turn around. And I learned a lot of things. I learned the power of really giving time to people, getting to know people. If you get to know a child's name and get to know something about them, it makes a
Yeah.
world of difference.
Yeah, that's super powerful, man. And it's, teaching for me, being a teacher, certainly in what we call here in the UK, a comprehensive school, a high school, a state-run school. It's a hard road, man. And my hat's off to anyone that does it well, because, geez. But it's interesting, isn't it? You didn't run away. And I think there's this phrase that we use a lot called finish well or end it well. Do you know what I mean? And not everything ends well. Not everything can finish well, but wherever possible, you try and get things to end well. And at least that's one of my philosophies, right? And so listening to you talk, that's what I'm kind of reminded of. So how important was it for you, do you think, to do that extra year? to finish well, to end it well, to listen to your dad?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me it was really important. I say for me, not in the sense of, oh, I decided that it was really important. I think just it was important for me. It's like I
Mm,
say, it was what God was doing in me in that year. It was ultra important, and not so much for because I thought it was a good thing. So I'm glad I did it, and I'm really, I certainly learned, as I say, I was a teacher. I learned more that year probably than anybody else did. So I think that's why it was so key. It
mm,
was key, and as I say, it's about so much about life is about people and about wrestling with difficult situations that you have with people, and the kids in the classroom they were part of that, and they were partly my teachers in terms of learning how to cope and manage people who can be difficult, or people who are struggling because they've got brokenness. Again,
mm,
it really does come back to that brokenness thing. A lot of those kids, they were pretty young, and yet
mm.
they'd already experienced some really hard stuff in life. And me just being aware that that was the case meant that I could be more patient, more tolerant with them.
Mm.
And yeah, I came out of it definitely having learned those lessons, certainly learned some lessons about how to relate to people better.
Yeah, yeah. And so you then leave and you head into I want to say Bible school, but it's not the proper name for it, is it?
Vicar Factory, I don't know. Theological College, I think.
Theological College. That's the one I'm looking for. Yeah. Vicar Factory, which is brilliant, isn't it? So, so you head over to the Vicar Factory. That's all. That's just what I'm going to call it
Yeah, why not?
now. You go to the Vicar Factory. How old are you when you hit this place?
Yeah, so Ruth and I get married just as we're going. So just before we go, we get
And
married.
isn't Ruth famed for saying she was never going to marry a vicar?
No, I'm not sure that's true. I don't think that is true.
Is it
Well,
not
she did
true? I
say
thought I thought I heard Ruth at some point say she never wanted to be a vicar's wife.
she just married someone who's going to be a vicar. So there you go.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, we literally just got married. We, as newlyweds, went away from our friends that we'd made in Twickenham. We were now in Oxford, kind of leafy Oxford, nice sort of pleasant environment. And yeah, we were just I was trying to learn how to be a vicar and
Mm,
do the job, as it were. And we were also at the same time, yeah, newly married, trying to learn how to relate well to one another, with some mistakes and some errors, and some good stuff on the way as well. But
yeah. Yeah. It's funny, isn't it? That whole that whole figuring life out in your early 20s, and especially when we got married, because we all got married quite close to each other, didn't we? Really, in
yeah,
terms of
that's right.
age
Yeah,
range.
yeah. But you'll remember, you remember that even before we got married, there was a bit of oh gosh, there's a bit of a hiccup. Is this the right thing that we're doing? And again, praise God, we did.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It all worked out in the end, didn't it? And then
All worked out.
you have three beautiful girls, and you. So you go from Vicar Factory, and then you go to your first posting in London, and then from there am I right in saying then from that you go to Harrow?
Yeah, that's right. So we were in North Kensington. So we went from this leafy suburb of Oxford. Literally, we looked out onto this. We were in a flat. We looked out onto the garden at the back of the flat. We didn't need net curtains, anything like that, because it was all quiet. And at night time, there was hardly any lights at all.
Mm,
And then we moved to this house in the middle of a London estate, right on the corner of the road, where we'd have these motorbikes which were around. They'd start up about 8 o'clock at night and then keep going until about 11, 12 at night. And we thought, what have we done? We've moved from this idyllic country side type place into the middle of what felt like noisy hell almost.
mm,
I mean, we had a guy got stabbed right outside the door, a couple of weeks in, I think. He didn't die, fortunately, but and we thought, what have we done? And one of the verses that really, Scripture's always good, I find, for me to
Yeah.
hold on when I've got a particular passage that. And for me, it was when we moved that time was Psalm 27, verse 1, which is, the Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid?
Mm.
Quite honestly, it was scary. It was scary to sort of
Yeah.
be lying in bed and hearing these noises go round and round and see the lights of the cars. And to begin with, you kind of thought, well, what have we done? And it was while we were there that we had kids. So we had young kids. We had 3 kids under 4 in that place, and at times you kind of think, what on earth are we doing? But God was
Mm.
with us, and yeah, He did. He really he was really gracious to us in that place, and we would sit on the front door with all these people coming past and get to know them, and that was part of our ministry, was just getting to know
Mm.
them, the neighbours and the community, and really saying to people in the community, look, you matter, you
Yeah.
matter. Some of you may have lived broken lives, but you matter to God, and we want to do things that celebrate that. And I can remember one thing we did was, we did a Good Neighbours Award,
Okay.
and literally we just went around the neighbourhood saying, "Hey, do you want to nominate one of your neighbours for being good neighbours?" We had some stories about bad neighbours as well, but
I bet you did. Yeah.
yeah,
Jeez.
yeah. But we wanted. But the thing is, we were so fed up for people knocking where they lived. We just wanted to say, people, look, there are good stories here too. And
Yeah.
so what we wanted to do was draw out just some of those good stories and say, look, guys, it's not all bad.
Mm.
If you will just open your eyes for a moment, you'll see God at work. And so it was just a way of hearing some stories, and then we literally we then invited these people who'd been nominated and just gave them all a lovely certificate, and got, I can't remember, we got sort of dignitary to come along and sort of give them their prizes and stuff like that. But it was great. It was great just to celebrate that
Fantastic.
stuff. Yeah.
I imagine that actually went down quite well.
Oh, it was. Yeah, no, it was great. I think the people who were nominating, as
Yeah.
well as the people who won prizes, that they liked telling their stories. They
Yeah.
wanted to tell about their neighbours who'd really helped them out. The people who'd sort of looked after their kids when they couldn't be there, or the people, yeah, who've done incredible things themselves.
Mm.
Funnily enough, one of the people who was nominated was guys that lived next door, and it was just just the way they cared for their son who
Yeah.
had physical difficulties, and somebody else had nominated them, and it was just lovely to sort of celebrate the way they parented this child
Mm.
who he had a lot of physical difficulties. It meant they had to sacrifice a lot to
Mm.
care for him, and yeah, they did that, and it was lovely to celebrate their efforts.
Yeah, I bet. And I would imagine it's those kind of things where you'll go back to their house 20 years later and some of them will still have their certificates out or
Yeah,
there.
probably. Yeah, no, I'm
Do you know
sure
what I mean?
that's true.
It's really fascinating
Yeah,
how you see that all these years later, and it still means a lot to people because actually a lot of people aren't told good things,
yeah,
certainly about them, all that often, which is a shame. So I'm curious, mate. Right, you've been doing church leadership now 20 years. You've been a vicar for you've been in the church thing, haven't you, for 20 years now? What are some of your favorite stories to come out of that? Because I mean, you get to walk with people through births, through christenings,
yeah,
through marriages, through funerals. You have to do it all, don't you, as
yeah.
a vicar of a
Oh,
Church of England? And I'm just kind of curious, what are some of the hero stories? Or not hero is a wrong phrase, but some really heartwarming stories, I suppose, that have come out of
yeah.
that.
I think always it's seeing people change. Those are the heartwarming stories. It's seeing people whose lives sometimes are not good, and just incredibly that they sort of meet with you as, I guess, a representative of God, and then they get to meet God themselves. And
Mm,
for me, it's not about meeting me. It's not about Ian being a wonderful person. It's about the fact that I've just got someone that they can be introduced to, and that they can be introduced to Jesus and get to know him. and realised that he's the one that makes the difference. When
Mm.
we left North Kensington, one of the I'd worked along the road at the community centre with a number of young children, and one of the young girls who joined our club, kind of youth club, and then eventually started coming along to church. She wrote me a letter, and it was all about how she'd changed because she'd met Jesus through
Mm.
me. And for me, that's a heartwarming
Oh,
story, because
wow. Yeah, I bet.
it's somebody who's directly saying, you've made a difference in my life. And
Mm.
and it was great to see. He was a girl who was from a broken family. Mum loved her dearly and was certainly looking after her, but she was living on this estate where, and she could have gone anyway,
Yeah.
and yet she chose to sort of, and she came along to church. Her mum wasn't particularly up for coming, but she came along to church anyway. Her mum was supportive, but didn't particularly want to come herself, and so she just let her daughter come along, and her daughter just flourished, and it was
Mm.
great to see. So that was heartwarming,
Yeah, I
and while
bet.
we've been here, we've seen that as well. We've seen people whose lives have turned around.
Mm.
Again, one of the people who's now working on staff with us here at St Paul's,
Oh, wow.
she came to us as somebody who I'm not interested in this stuff. I've never really been interested in God or God stuff. I've ignored him all my life. And then just was walking along one day, saw the fact we've got a poster up to do Alpha, which is a kind of come and ask questions about Jesus type course. And so she just felt drawn to come in, and she did. And she probably didn't know what she was doing at the time. Um, but she came on that, and as she was going through, she asked the questions that she'd got,
Mm.
and came to the point where she went, do you know what, I think there's something in this. I'm gonna go for this. And she made a commitment to say, God, come into my life. And she hasn't looked back. She's incredibly been changed, as I say, to the point where she's now working on staff with us at the church, and is blessing loads of other people, and is generous, is
Mm.
warm-hearted, has come out of herself, I think, probably in ways that she would have been a very defended person in the
Mm.
past. But just wonderfully warm and giving now. And
Mm.
yeah, I think she would look back on her old self and sort of say, I've been transformed, I've been changed.
Yeah.
And that's what God
That's
does.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. He's in the business of doing that, isn't he? Really,
Oh,
the whole
absolutely.
transformation thing. You mentioned earlier, actually, one of the statements you made was nothing is ever wasted with God,
Yeah.
and I'm kind of curious. Let's dig into that a little bit. What do you mean by that phrase?
Well, there's a phrase in Romans which says that all things work together for good for
Mm.
those who love God. And um, there's a lot of things that happen in life which we have to say that in itself wasn't a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
So we will, we've had lots of conflict, I think, as church leaders.
Mm.
Ruth and I, as wife and husband, we'll have times of conflict and disagreement, and actually, I would, looking back on it now, I would say I'm glad we've had those conflicts and worked through them, and it's the
Mm.
working through the key bit there. But I'm glad we've had the conflict and worked through them. I don't think our marriage would be the same if we hadn't had those things.
Mm.
So when I say nothing's wasted, it's like we might have times when we've fallen out, and we've had to sort of really sit down and talk through, why is it that you do that, Ian? Why don't you understand me? Why aren't you caring? And then I've been able to sort of say my bit, and we've had to wrestle through, often to a place of compromise, in order to realize, actually, now that we've talked that through, we know one another better.
Yeah.
And now that we know one another better, our relationship is stronger.
Yeah.
And now, actually, we're in a better place than we were.
Yeah.
So, it's all very well said, and I meet people when I'm getting them ready to being married, when I marry them in church, and I'll always say to people, have you had a falling out yet? And for some people, they haven't yet, but you kind of go, well, I hope you do soon, because actually part of the relationship is disagreeing well,
Yeah.
learning how to cope with conflict well and coming through it. And I know I've shared with you in the past, as a close friend, sometimes when we've had, there's been difficult things in church life where people have been maybe haven't understood why we're doing things, and therefore kind of got the hump with us, or maybe sometimes we've got the hump with others. But actually, but when you really sit down and hear one another well, generally, if there is an openness on both sides, then you can work those things through.
Yeah.
Occasionally, you just have to walk your separate ways.
Mm.
Uh, but those times can be incredible. Or we've had a number of people who I can think of, certainly quite a few people who we've had to sit down. I've had to sit down and go, look, I've got the feeling here, all is not well between you and me.
Mm.
They're a bit cold to me. Then they're not speaking to me, and then they'll turn around and say, Ian, you said this or you did this, and it made me feel really rubbish, or it made me feel like you didn't think what I had to say was important. And
Mm.
I'd work it through with them. 9 times out of 10, it was they maybe misunderstood me slightly, or I
Mm.
said it when I was doing it,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I said sorry, and we've moved on from that. Or they've kind of gone, oh, okay, actually, I realized I misunderstood you. Sorry, and we've moved forward together.
Yeah.
And those are, yeah. So things aren't wasted, and I do think often those are the things that make you stronger. I think they say that when you break a bone, but then it heals again. Actually,
Mm.
sometimes it can be even stronger in that place of the break.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it's not all bad. It's not
It's
all bad.
it's a really powerful lesson, isn't it? Because I like you, I can look back over my life and I can go, well, that experience wasn't great, but out of that has come this.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying that God caused that experience over
No.
there, but what I am saying is, out of that, God has created something wonderful, and He's not necessarily been derailed, for want of a better expression, by probably my own stupidity. And it's interesting how you talked about the transformation stories, the heartwarming stories. And then, you talked about yourself and Ruth and conflict with church members. So the transformation is not just for people who are necessarily outside of church or broken. I'm listening to you talk, and it's as much for you as it is for your congregants. Is that the right
Yeah.
word?
Yeah. Well, probably. We've all got brokenness, and we'll never not have brokenness this side of heaven. For me, it's about not wanting to remain broken, and it's
Mm.
seeking healing when I realize that I'm broken. So yeah, I think sometimes people think the problem with church is they're full of hypocrites, and they're full of people who do things that they shouldn't be doing. And reality is that's because they're broken people, and
Yeah.
they're on a journey. Uh, if somebody's not changing at all, then I would argue that then they're probably not opening themselves up to Jesus, in
Mm.
order that he can help them change. But I think if we're open to it, God can change anybody.
Yeah.
If we're open to it, it
Yeah.
doesn't matter whether you've been a Christian for 40 years, you can still sometimes have really deep rooted stuff in your life that still needs dealing with. You can be somebody who's completely new to faith, and God can be at work on you there as well. And sometimes there's a grace. I think sometimes there's a grace for people who've just come to faith in Christ. Sometimes you think he solves things really quickly for them, and other times they just
Yeah.
you have to work those out of a long period of time. For me, one of my things was growing up, I was often quite angry internally. So if I got cross, I would internalize it,
Mm.
hide it, push it down, and then suddenly snap. And if I snapped, normally what I would do is I'd break something that was around me. And that
Mm.
as a kid, that's kind of how I would cope with my negative emotions. And so one of the things in later life is kind of learning to give that to God, learning to express it earlier,
Mm.
um, rather than pushing down, and having this sort of explosion type thing come later. And that's important because when you've got kids around in the house, you don't want to be just flying off the handle at any time. And occasionally that would still happen, but certainly I was, I know I'm a less angry, more balanced person for the fact that I've been able to give that stuff to God
Yeah.
and see it work on me.
Yeah, no, that's a fair comment. It's interesting, isn't it, how when we look at I have this conversation quite a lot. I don't know if you're like me, Diggs, where because my kids are of a certain age, I'm very interested in the current culture that they're growing up in, and I'm very aware of the sort of the ideals of society, and I'm like, that's just weird, or that needs to change, or that needs to change. But quite often in the midst of that, as you're praying, God, sort it out, he tends to focus on me first. Do you know what I mean? It's like, and if I've never dared pray the prayer, God, you need to change Sharon, my wife, because she's just bang out of order. Because I know as soon as those words come out of my mouth, God's just going to, it's almost like God's going to just slap me upside the head and go, Matt, dude, come on. Change starts with you, right? And it's interesting, isn't it, as listening to you talk, that actually a lot of this stuff God deals with us first, right?
Yeah, no, it's good. There's a guy called Danny Silk who is a church pastor in the States, and he wrote a book about parenting, which I found really helpful. And he talked about often as a dad, he'd be like this big yellow truck, like he'd come into the situation, he'd just roll over it. It was, and he'd try and take charge, and like one of those big, massive wheeled dumper trucks would sort of eventually kind of come into the situation like that. And I recognized, that was me. Quite often that was me. That was what I was doing as dad. I would kind of come into the situation as dad and sort of stomp all over the kid, not literally stomp all over the kids. It's okay. But I just take charge, and actually I realized that I actually had to start treating my kids, listening to them, hearing them better, listening to what they had to say, listening to their perspective. That two of them had been fighting, actually sitting down and really hearing what both of them had to say, and learning to not be that dumper truck thing. And actually, as you say, learning that I had to actually kind of go, it's not actually their stuff. The first thing I've got to do is deal with how I'm responding to this situation.
Yeah.
Deal with my response. Okay, so I'm getting fed up that I can't read my newspaper or watch TV because they're making noise. They're kids, they're playing, they're having, it's like, they don't know that I've had a hard day. They don't know that. And it's kind of having to go, okay, Lord, all right, that's my stuff there. And it's incredible how their stuff seems more manageable when you've dealt with your stuff. Their stuff more manageable when you've dealt with your stuff.
Yeah, it totally is.
You're just in that place of you're more peaceful. If they're sort of answering back to you, it's less of an issue when you're more at peace. It washes off you a bit more, and you're able just to deal with the actual problem. Just ignore that sort of back chat, and just get to the heart of it.
How have you found then being both a parent and a husband as a church leader? Because as a church leader, you are under a constant microscope, aren't you? Everybody's watching how you do things. So have you felt the pressure to try and be I don't know what the right word to use is, but sort of be a better parent or a better husband than maybe you would have felt had you not been a church leader, because you're not under that microscope?
Yeah, it's interesting. There's been a few times when people have either said things directly to our kids about their behavior, and or on an occasion said, you should know better because you're the vicar's kids, or something like that. And that's a required patience on my part to not slap them.
Punch them in the head.
But you actually, I'll be honest. Generally, the church we've been in has been a really gracious church generally. So I would say not too much. I would say most of the pressure, most of the expectation would probably be myself on myself,
right?
Rather than from other people, if I'm honest. It's been interesting recently, in the last couple of years, two of our girls are no longer in the church that we worship at. They still love Jesus. They still go to church, but they've kind of come to us and said, you know, this church that you're running, we don't want to be here anymore, for various reasons, you know, and it was just more a case. I think it's more of a case that they need to spread their wings and do their own thing, and I get that. And you know, I think we could have said, oh well, what will people think about us? You know, will they think, oh, we failed with our kids because they're not coming to our church? Is our church not good enough? If your children aren't coming here, why should I send my children here? And I think we've just gone, no, you know, this is what our children need for now, for this season. You know, they were all over 16 when they did it. It wasn't, you know, but it's been fun. And they actually, what I've seen is they're much more mature. They're much more excited and engaged in life. They've got to know new people. They're more rounded for it. So we've lost nothing from it. So
and actually they've gained, because obviously I know your daughters, and you kind of go, well, they've got actually quite wonderful relationships with God themselves, and they're not on mum and dad's faith, right? They're
no, absolutely.
They're very much, no, this is my journey, my story now, and that's quite wonderful to see, because I think it's easy to sort of just drift along, isn't it? And they've not done that, so hats off to them, you know. And I think it's funny watching my own kids. The sort of the two boys have gone off to uni, and you kind of think, you look at the fact that they've got involved in church, they've got involved in the CU, they're different churches, and it's actually been really good for them. You know, they're figuring it out for themselves, and I quite enjoy watching that, you know. Really enjoy watching that. Let me just come back to it. I always write notes, mate, whenever I'm doing interviews, and I wrote down the word letter, and I circled it. And I just want to come back to a point you mentioned earlier about how someone wrote you a letter saying how their life had changed because they met Christ through you, right? If you are listening to this podcast, or if you're watching it on YouTube, and you are part of a church, can I encourage you to write to your dear church leaders and just say thanks? Because that simple act, I mean, you talk about it with a smile on your face, and you know, and it's one of those things where I think it makes a big difference, right, to church leaders. Just the encouragement from people who are just heartfelt in their thanks.
I still remember the day as a teacher when one of the other teachers said something complimentary to me. You know, and it was like, okay, that's good. You know, it's like, you know, the things that people say when they say thank you or well done, you know, sadly, sometimes we can count on, you know, maybe one, maybe two hands, but because we just sometimes don't do it enough. Yeah, it's interesting. We've just told our church that we're leaving, so we've just had a whole lot of people saying, "Oh, we're really going to miss you," you know, and they've said this, this, and this, and like you say, it'd be great sometimes if we didn't have to go for people to say that. Yeah. To be fair, you know, some of them have said it through the years as well. But yeah, absolutely. Bless, you know, and it's not just true of church leaders. I'd say of anybody in your workplaces, learn to praise, learn to thank people, learn to encourage, and speak it out. Don't wait until people die to say nice things about them.
Yeah, no, super true. Because I was telling you before we hit record, I was at a funeral this afternoon, and I came away from the funeral thinking, the person that had passed away, she was young and beautiful lady. I've known her for a few years, had the most amazing smile, but because of the way COVID was, I'd not really seen her for a few years. And I came away thinking, I wished I'd caught up with her a little bit, you know, before she'd passed away. And I think you're right. You think of these things too late, don't you? Quite often, and actually, I think, you know, there are people that are important in your life. Just say thank you. Just appreciate what they do. Really, really helpful. No, very good. Okay, mate. So we've got to that part of the show where I say to you, right? What is your one message? Like, I know you preach a lot, right? You're a church leader, but if you just had one message which you could give, and the reality of it probably is, Diggs, like me, you've got one message which you keep coming back to all the time anyway, regardless of what the topic is. What would that be?
Yeah, I think for me, it comes back to a verse in the Bible, which is Proverbs 3, 5 and 6, which says, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding, but in all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make the path straight. And for me, I think the first time I really remember that verse was a number of people gave it to me when I went traveling around the world. And I totally saw that to be true. As I traveled around the world, in fact, actually, funnily enough, I found an old document I came across with, this was 20 things that already in about 2 months God had done for me in that time of traveling around the world. And just by depending on him and just trusting him, yeah, he helps us through life, and he makes, as it were, our path straight, sometimes when we don't even see where there's going to be a path. For
Yeah.
me, that's my message is, Ian, stop trying to do it on your own. Stop trying to be a proud person and do it your own strength. Remember that somebody alongside, somebody who can help you, somebody who can do it so much better than you can. So why don't you just ask for his help and get on board with his program rather than trying to run things your way? And that would be my sense is, if you want a life which is really rich, if you want a life which is really fulfilled, then stop trying to do it your way and start doing Jesus's way, because it's going to be so much richer, so much better, so much more, fulfilling and life-giving and full of joy and peace if you do it his way. So, I constantly say that on the days where I kind of think, oh, I don't know what I'm going to do today about this problem. Suddenly I know that we've suddenly discovered that the gas bill has tripled at church, and how are we ever going to pay for that? And I just say to myself, don't go there, Ian. Don't try and do it, figure it out on your own. Go to him first and seek his counsel.
Yeah, trust in the Lord. The husband of the lady that passed away today at the funeral, he said in his talk that when she found out that she had cancer, because she passed away of cancer, when she found out she had cancer, when she was first given the diagnosis, the first two words out of her mouth were, let's pray. And I think as I'm listening to you talking about trust in the Lord, I'm remembering that story, and it's like, we've got this news. It's not good. Going back to the nothing is ever wasted with God. Let's pray. Let's trust that God somehow in the middle of all of this can turn things around and do something quite extraordinary with what's going on. That's awesome, man. That's awesome. So let me ask you my Oscars question, because I like my Oscars question and I'm asking it everybody just because I can. So you're at the Oscars, right? You've won an Oscar, a Lifetime Achievement Award for Digger Dowsett here. Digger, by the way, is our nickname for Ian. So if you get to know him, just stop calling him Digger if you've heard it on the podcast. So you get this Lifetime Achievement Award, right? And you stand up at the awards ceremony and everyone's going crazy. Well done, Diggs. And you unfurl a piece of paper and you start off with this statement. I would just like to thank ... Whether it's a preacher, a parent, a family member, whoever, who's on your list of people that you want to thank for Dowsett, Ian, Reverend?
We've got another hour, is that right?
To be fair, I'm looking at your video feed, right? And it's getting darker and darker and darker because it's dusk. There we go.
I was thinking the same. I was thinking I'd turn the light off again. That's much better.
I'll tell you, if you're watching the YouTube video, Master's talking to himself. There's his voice coming from somewhere we don't know. But there he is. There's Ian. So yeah, go for it. Who are you thanking, bud?
Oh gosh. Well, I think I would definitely start with the person who's helped me learn more about myself than anybody else, which is my wife. So Ruth would be the first thank you would be to my wife. She's been fantastic. She's put up with me. I think that's the most amazing thing I can say about her. But I love doing life with her, and one of the great things has been we do a lot together. Actually, we're not one of those, we love the fact that we like doing stuff together. We like working together, and we're not the same. We complement each other. There's some things that we like that is the same, and other things that aren't, but we complement each other well. I'm super grateful for her. I think I'd say definitely my parents. They were the ones ultimately who started me on my faith journey, because they too love Jesus and they've always modelled that. I know that when it comes to my parents' funeral, there'll be so many people who will say these people touched my life, and I would certainly be one of them, and say that, you know, they gave me life, but also they showed me so many great characteristics about life as well. So they're fantastic people, and
they are absolute legends. And I mean, for many years we'd power around your house on New Year's Eve, take over the house as our friendships grew, and we all got married. And they were so gracious and wonderful. And we always looked forward to seeing Pete and Mary every New Year's, you know, and it was just fantastic. And I remember early on in our marriage, Sharon had a few questions and about a few things, and she's like, I'm just going to call Mary. So I'm just going to call Mary. I'm just what I'm going to do. And she ends up speaking to your mum and going, what do you think about him? You should do it. She was like, thanks very much. I appreciate that. And so, no, your parents are absolute legends. Absolute legends.
Brilliant. Yeah, no, they're great. I think one of the other guys there's many people who helped me through my sort of early years, but I think one of the guys who's been absolutely fantastic is Stuart Lees. He's a guy he was a curate at our church when I was growing up, but I've stayed in touch with him for years now. We're still in touch at the moment, and it's been great because actually our relationship has changed. It's changed from sort of, I suppose, sort of the person I sort of look up to more now to being more of a big brother type figure.
Yeah.
And you know, he was the person I said earlier about really was moving on in freedom himself and helped me move on in that. And I'm super grateful that I was around when that happened for him, and in order that I could kind of follow along and catch up and learn stuff from him. And he's always been super generous, super vulnerable. You know, that's part of it. He'd share the bad stuff that was going on for him in order that I could learn from that. You know, he'd be really honest with me about some of his failings in order that, you know, that he was a real person. You know, and it's like, I think that way. You know, but I look at you, Stuart, and you seem like you've got it all together. And then he'd tell you something about his inner story, and I'd be like, yeah, but that's how I feel.
Yeah.
I don't. And so just the fact that someone would be vulnerable with you, that just is so precious. So I'm so grateful to him for that vulnerability and just journeying with me for so long, and occasionally challenging me too. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? That whole mentor thing was a word you used earlier. That whole someone doing life with you who's probably just a little bit further on. We sometimes throw around this phrase discipleship in church. But it's that whole kind of thing, isn't it? Just doing life with people. And I'm very aware of people that have done that with me. You know, I think about Dave Conley and you just kind of think, oh, I'm so grateful for these people who were vulnerable, willing to share, encourage me when I needed encouraging, punch me in the head when I needed punching in the head. Do you know what I mean? They're just awesome people. And it's one of the things that I love about the church is this. We're not perfect, like you say. We are a bit hypocritical on occasions, but there is a genuine desire to see God's kingdom come. And when you find somebody with that kind of heart, man, your life changes, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I think, you know, that's it, isn't it? We're not perfect people, but if we're trying to change, then that's an important thing. Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah, totally. So, Diggs, you're a legend. Thanks for being my mate all these years. I still remember when we first met at uni and started getting together in halls. I was a very new Christian at this point in time, and you and Dan Pryor and people like that totally encouraged me in my faith. And so, whilst mentors are good mates are good too. And I'm super lucky that we.
Mention you as one of the people.
Say again.
I forgot to mention you as one of the people.
I don't think you forgot at all. That's way down the list. That's fine. But that's awesome.
Will now not be broadcast.
Yeah. We'll just edit that bit out. Yeah, totally. So, If you would like to get a hold of Ian, if you'd like to connect with him, find out more about what he's doing, then you can reach Ian through the Crowd Church website, www.crowd.church, or you can go to the What's the Story website, which is what'sthestorypodcast.com, which is exactly the same. You'll think, oh, this all looks awfully like the Crowd Church website. They go to the same place. It just is what it is. But Digger, you're a legend, man. Love the bones off you. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. Time has gone by so quickly. We might have to do this again, part 2, follow up. Yeah, you're a legend. You and Ruth, awesome people. Love you loads. Thanks for being on the show, man.
Yeah, mate, lovely to be with you.
We will, of course, link to Ian in the show notes if you want to get a hold of him, like I say, through the Crowd Church stuff. It's all on the website, along with the transcripts and all that sort of stuff. And of course, if you'll sign up to the newsletter, that will come straight to your inbox automatically. So there you have it. What a phenomenal conversation with my very good mate. Thanks again to Ian for joining me. Remember to check out Crowd Online Church. www.crowd.church is the website, even if you might not see the point of church. We are an online church on a quest to discover how Jesus helps us live this more meaningful life that Ian was talking about. We are a community, a space to explore the Christian faith, and a place where you can contribute and grow, and you are welcome at Crowd Church. Be sure to subscribe to What's the Story wherever you get your podcast from, because we've got some more great episodes lined up, and I don't want you to miss any of them. And in case no one has told you yet today, you are awesome. Yes, you are. You are created awesome, and it is a burden you just have to bear. That's the way it goes. What's the Story is produced by Crowd Online Church. You can find our entire archive of episodes on your favorite podcast app. The team that makes this show possible is Sadaf Bainon, Josh Catchpole, Estella Robin, and Tim Johnson. Our theme song is written by Josh Edmondson, and if you'd like to read the transcript or show notes, as I said, head over to the website what'sthestorypodcast.com and sign up to the weekly newsletter while you are there. That's it from me. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a fantastic week. I will see you next time. Bye for now.